My name is Hillel. For 5 years, I was a ghost. My life was a monument to a single rainy night when a police officer told me my wife, Vivian, and my 2 children, Lily and Kendrick, were gone. My own brother, Cheryl, was my rock. He held me up at the funeral. He packed away their lives into cardboard boxes. He convinced me to sell our home, saying the memories would poison me. I believed him. I believed the closed casket was a mercy. I believed the weight in my chest was grief. I was wrong. The weight was betrayal. The grief was a lie, meticulously crafted by the 2 people I trusted most. Last month, in a park 3 hours from my tomb of an apartment, I saw them. A woman who was my dead wife, pushing a little girl on a swing. A girl with the same unique strawberry-shaped birthmark as my daughter, Lily. And a man, laughing, holding the hand of a boy who was the mirror image of my son, Kendrick. That man was my brother, Cheryl. In that single, silent moment, my world didn't just shatter, it inverted. The grave they buried me in was not one of sorrow, but of their deceit. They thought I was broken. They thought I would live out my days as the sad, quiet widower, a convenient ghost. They were wrong. I am going to tell you how I uncovered the truth, and I am going to tell you about the box I found in my brother's basement. A box that held the key not to my forgiveness, but to their ruin. This is not a story about moving on. This is a story about balance. This is my confession. They called me the widower of Oak Lane. I didn't give myself the name, but I wore it. It was a suit I never took off, woven from silence and memory. For 5 years, it was all I was. I am 65 years old. For half a decade, I lived in a tomb of my own making, an apartment that smelled of lemon polish and forgotten things. Cheryl, my younger brother, found it for me. "A fresh start, Hillel," he'd said, his voice so full of a pity that felt like love. "You can't stay in that house. The memories will poison you." He was my rock. He was the one who held me up at the funeral when my legs gave out. He was the one who packed away Vivian's dresses, the silk that still whispered of her perfume. He boxed up Lily's stuffed animals, her little zoo of threadbare creatures. He sealed away Kendrick's Legos, the plastic bricks of castles and starships we'd built together. I couldn't do it. My hands shook too much. Cheryl did it all with a quiet, efficient sorrow. He was all I had left. The grief wasn't a wave that came and went. It was a weight, a constant physical pressure on my sternum, a stone in my gut that made food taste like ash. I carried it from the bed to the chair, from the chair to the window, where I'd watch a world that had the audacity to keep turning. The police said it was a tragedy, a simple, brutal accident on a rain-slicked road. Vivian was driving the kids back from a piano recital. A blowout, a skid, a collision with a guardrail. They didn't suffer, the officer had told me, his eyes unable to meet mine. A closed casket, they said. Too much damage. Cheryl had agreed instantly. Remember them as they were, Hillel, whole. And I, a hollowed-out man, agreed. What else could I do? So I built my life around their absence. I set one place at the table. I drank my coffee from the chipped mug Kendrick made me in art class. I slept on my side of the bed, my hand resting on the cold, empty space where Vivian should have been. Cheryl visited every Sunday. He'd bring groceries, talk about his work, his life that had so conveniently continued. He'd ask if I needed anything, if I was getting out. He was my tether to the living, and I was grateful. I was. But the stone in my chest never got lighter. The silence in the apartment was a presence. It was the sound of Lily's laughter, extinct. It was the echo of Kendrick's footsteps, stilled. It was the space where Vivian's voice should have been, telling me about her day, her worries, her dreams. I was a curator of a museum dedicated to a lost civilization, my own. The business trip was Cheryl's idea. "It's just one meeting, Hillel, in Crestwood, a simple client consultation. It'll get you out of this apartment." He made it sound like a life preserver. I now know it was a test, to see if the ghost was still safely in its tomb. Crestwood was 3 hours away, a city of glass and noise that felt alien. The meeting was a blur of handshakes and presentations I couldn't focus on. My head throbbed with the effort of being normal. Afterward, desperate for air that didn't taste of recycled office building, I found a park. It was a beautiful, cruel parody of the one I used to take my children to. The same squeak of swing chains, the same shrieks of joy. The sounds were like needles on my skin. I found an empty bench, a monument to a dead man, and watched. I watched other people's lives unfold, a silent movie of happiness I was no longer part of. And then the world stopped. On a swing set 30 yards away, a little girl was pumping her legs, her hair flying behind her. "Higher, Mommy, higher!" The woman pushing her laughed, a sound that cut through the park's noise and struck me directly in the soul. It was a laugh I knew. I had recorded it in my mind 1,000 times. It was Vivian's laugh. My breath hitched. A cold sweat broke out on my brow. "It's a hallucination," I told myself. "The grief has finally broken your mind." I blinked, hard, expecting the mirage to vanish. It didn't. She turned, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so uniquely Vivian, so effortless that the stone in my chest cracked. It was her. The line of her jaw, the way she stood with her weight on one hip. She was older, her face slightly fuller, but it was her. My Vivian. Alive. My eyes, wide and disbelieving, darted to the little girl. She was Lily's age. She had Lily's build. And as the swing arced back, the collar of her dress shifted, and I saw it, just below her hairline, on the left side of her neck. A small, strawberry-shaped birthmark. The world tilted. The park sounds faded into a dull roar. My heart was a frantic, caged bird beating against my ribs. No. It can't be. Then a boy, maybe 7, ran up to them, holding a half-melted ice cream cone. "Dad says I have to share," he complained, and my gaze followed his path. A man was walking up from the ice cream cart, smiling. A tall man, with a familiar, easy stride and my father's chin. He ruffled the boy's hair, and the boy looked up at him. It was Kendrick's face. My son's cowlick. My son's smile. The man was Cheryl. My brother, laughing in the sun with my children. My brother sharing a look with my wife, a look of comfortable domestic familiarity. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was a fossil, frozen in the bedrock of my own betrayal. I watched them for 10 minutes or an hour. Time had lost all meaning. I saw the life I should have had, the life that was stolen from me, playing out in perfect, horrifying detail. Cheryl lifting Lily from the swing, Vivian wiping Kendrick's face, a perfect, happy family. I had become a ghost in my own life, watching the living move on without me. But they hadn't moved on. They had left me behind. A sound escaped my lips, a choked, strangled thing that was half sob, half gasp. I stood up, my legs trembling, and stumbled away from the bench, from the park, from the beautiful, terrible lie I had just witnessed. I didn't know it then, but the grieving was over. Something else was beginning to stir in the hollowed-out space where my heart used to be. Something cold, something hard, something with teeth. The drive home was a white-knuckle nightmare. The 3-hour journey felt both endless and instantaneous. My mind was a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a different piece of the horror. Vivian's laugh, Lily's birthmark, Kendrick's smile, Cheryl's eyes so full of contentment. Every time a car passed me, its headlights looked like the accusing eyes of the dead. My dead, who weren't dead. I made it back to my apartment, my hands shaking so violently I could barely fit the key in the lock. The moment the door closed behind me, the silence of the tomb descended. But it was different now. Before, The silence was filled with memory. Now, it was filled with their lies. I poured a whiskey, the glass clattering against my teeth. The liquid fire did nothing to warm the ice in my veins. Did I imagine it? The question was a desperate, final plea for my sanity. I was an old man, broken by grief. Surely my mind had conjured a cruel fantasy. But the birthmark, the strawberry birthmark, it was so specific, so real. I stumbled to the closet and pulled out a box Cheryl had labeled H, Keepsakes. My hands tore through it, scattering old photo albums until I found the one I needed. Lily, years 3 and 5. I flung it open, my heart hammering. There she was, my Lily, at the beach, laughing. And there, clear as day on her tiny neck, was the birthmark. The exact same shape, the exact same placement. A cold, hard certainty settled in my gut. It was real. It was all real. The closed casket. Cheryl's insistence. It's better this way, Hillel. Remember them whole. A memory, long buried, surfaced through the fog of grief. A year before the accident. I'd come home early from a fishing trip. Vivian and Cheryl were in the kitchen, their heads close together. They pulled apart quickly when I entered, their conversation dying mid-sentence. Just going over some investment ideas, Cheryl had said, a little too smoothly. Vivian had busied herself at the sink, her shoulders tense. I had thought nothing of it. Cheryl was a financial advisor. It made sense. Now it felt sinister. A secret shared. I thought of the life insurance. A substantial policy paid to me. Cheryl had helped me file the claim. I thought of the house sale. Cheryl had found the buyer, handled the paperwork. It's a good offer, Hillel. You should take it and be free of the place. He had sold my home. My children's home. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark, sleeping street. The weight in my chest was no longer the heavy stone of grief. It had been transformed. It was now a sharp, focused shard of pure, undiluted rage. They had not just taken my family. They had taken my 5 years. They had taken my tears, my mourning, my quiet, desperate love for their memories. They had made a fool of me. Cheryl, who patted my shoulder and told me to be strong, was tucking my son into bed at night. Vivian, whose memory I had cherished as a saint, was reading bedtime stories to my daughter, living a new life with my brother. The police had a report. The coroner had a verdict. The world had a story. But I had just seen the truth with my own eyes, and the truth had changed everything. The man who had wept in this apartment for 5 years was gone. In his place was someone else, someone with a purpose. The first quiet question formed in the new, cold silence of my mind, a question that would become my obsession. How? And more importantly, what will I do about it? If you're just joining this heartbreaking journey, you're not alone. This community has been my strength. To make sure you don't miss the next chapter of my story, do us a solid, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You're not just watching a story unfold, you're standing with me. Now, let's get back to it. For a week, I was a ghost haunting my own life. I moved through my apartment like a sleepwalker, the image of that park seared onto the back of my eyelids. The rage was a live wire in my chest, buzzing and dangerous. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was a bomb waiting for a fuse. I had to see it again. I had to be sure my mind wasn't crafting some elaborate, grief-stricken fantasy. So I became a stalker. I drove back to Crestwood, a strange calm settling over me. This time, I wasn't a grieving widower on a bench. I was a hunter. I found their neighborhood, a picture-perfect slice of suburbia with manicured lawns and basketball hoops. It was the life I had once dreamed of providing, now lived by my betrayers. Their house was a charming 2-story colonial, pale yellow with dark green shutters. A tricycle was tipped over on the walkway. My chest tightened. Kendrick's had been red. This one was blue. I parked my car a block away, a plain sedan that was as anonymous as I felt. I watched. In the morning, Cheryl left for work, dressed in a suit, looking every bit the successful family man. The betrayal was so mundane it was chilling. An hour later, Vivian, Helen, I'd heard a neighbor call her, emerged with the children, loading them into a minivan for school. Helen. The name was a slap. Had she ever really been my Vivian? I followed her, to the grocery store, to the dry cleaner, to a coffee shop where she met a friend and laughed. She laughed so easily. Each laugh was a fresh betrayal. I watched her through the window, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. This wasn't the fragile, grieving widow I had mourned. This was a vibrant woman, living a life completely untethered from the wreckage she'd left behind. The anger curdled into something else, something colder and more profound, a deep, soul-crushing shame. How had I not seen it? What had I lacked that made this new life, this lie, so preferable to the one we built? The questions ate at me, more corrosive than the grief ever was. On the third day of my vigil, I saw them in the backyard. Cheryl was grilling. Vivian was setting the patio table. The children were chasing fireflies as the sun set. It was a tableau of perfect family bliss. A performance, and I was the only one in the audience who knew it was all a lie. I raised the digital camera I'd bought, the long lens bringing them achingly close. I clicked the shutter. Click. Cheryl flipping a burger. Click. Vivian smiling, handing him a plate. Click. Lily, the strawberry birthmark clear on her neck, hugging Cheryl's leg. I took the pictures not as evidence for anyone else, but as proof for myself. To make the nightmare real. To ensure I could never again doubt the depth of their treachery. I was documenting the crime scene of my own murdered life. That night, back in my apartment, I laid the printed photos out on my coffee table. The happy family, the beautiful home, the life of Helen and Cheryl. The ghost was no longer haunting the house. The ghost was building a case. The photos were my Rosetta Stone, but I couldn't decipher the language of the betrayal. I needed context. I needed to understand the how. The police report, the closed casket, the financials. Cheryl had managed it all. I started with what I could access. I logged into my old computer, the one I hadn't used since before the accident. My financial records were a mess, but Cheryl had always helped me sort them. "Don't worry about it, Hillel," he'd say. "I've got it." Now I worried. I started tracing back. A year before they died, Vivian had insisted we take out larger life insurance policies. For the children's future, she'd said. Cheryl had recommended the agent. Then I found the withdrawals. Several large transfers from our joint savings account to an investment portfolio Cheryl managed. High yield, low risk, he'd promised. The statements had stopped coming to the house a few months before the accident. Going paperless, Vivian had chirped. I'd trusted them. They were my wife and my brother. Sitting there in the blue glow of the monitor, the pieces began to click into place, forming a picture so ugly I felt physically ill. The money had been moved, consolidated, and made ready. The insurance was in place. They had been planning this for a long, long time. But why the elaborate ruse? Why not just leave me? The shame answer whispered again. Because you were weak. They knew you'd fall apart. This was cleaner. A memory, sharp and unbidden, pierced through the fog. A month before the accident. A rainy night, much like the one they supposedly died on. I'd come home to find Vivian and Cheryl in the living room, a map spread out on the coffee table. They'd snapped it shut when I walked in. "Planning a surprise trip for your birthday," Cheryl had said, a little too quickly. Vivian's smile had been tight, nervous. I had beamed, feeling loved. A fool. They weren't planning a trip. They were planning an exit. The final, crucial piece fell into place as I stared at a photo of Cheryl, his arm casually slung around Vivian's shoulders. The familiarity, the ease. It wasn't a new development. The affection between them was old, weathered. This wasn't an affair that started after a tragic loss. This was a love that had been hiding in plain sight. My brother hadn't just helped my wife fake her death. He had taken my place. He had always wanted my life, my house, my stability, maybe even my wife, and he had found a way to simply steal it. The cold fury returned, but now it was focused. It had a target. I didn't need a court of law to tell me this was wrong. I was the judge and jury of my own devastation, and I was beginning to understand what the sentence would have to be. It wouldn't be enough to expose them. That would only make them martyrs, a family fighting against a crazy, vengeful old man. It would traumatize the children. No, I had to do something they would never see coming. I had to hurt them where they lived. Not their bodies, but their perfect, stolen life. I'm not a detective. I'm an accountant, retired. My tools are numbers and patterns, not fingerprints and witness statements. So I hired one, a man named Miles, who was as discreet as he was expensive. I didn't tell him the whole story, just that I suspected my late wife's estate had been mishandled, and I needed the full, unvarnished truth. I gave him the dates of the withdrawals, the name of the insurance agent. I gave him Vivian's and Cheryl's names and the address of the yellow house. Find the money, I told him. Find the trail. While Miles worked his modern magic, I worked with the past. I drove to the town where the accident happened. It was a winding, wooded road along a ravine. I stood at the guardrail, the one the police report said they'd hit. It was scarred, but no more than any other on that stretch. I tried to feel something, a connection to the spot where my life had supposedly ended. I felt nothing but the chill of a lie. I visited the scrapyard that had taken the totaled car. The grizzled old owner remembered it. A real mess, he'd grunted. But weird. Weird how? I asked, my heart in my throat. The VIN was a bit scratched up, not from the crash neither. Looked deliberate, and the car was old, a beater. Didn't seem like the kind of car a family like yours would be in. A purchased wreck, a scratched VIN. The pieces were no longer clicking. They were slamming together. 2 weeks later, Miles met me in a quiet corner of a public library. He slid a thin folder across the table. His face was grim. It's all there, Mr. Hillel. The money from your savings was funneled through a shell corporation and used as a down payment on the house in Crestwood. The life insurance payout? A significant portion was invested in my brother's financial advisory firm, giving him a controlling stake. He paused, letting the cold facts settle. The car involved in the accident was purchased for cash from a junkyard in another state, 6 weeks before the incident. The title was signed over to a Helen Miller. He looked at me, his eyes holding a flicker of pity. And there's a marriage certificate from Las Vegas, dated 2 weeks after the accident. Cheryl Hillel to Helen Miller. The finality of it was a physical blow. They hadn't even waited. While I was picking out caskets, they were picking out wedding bands. I paid Miles, thanked him, and walked out of the library into the blinding sun. The folder felt like a lead weight in my hand. I had the truth, the whole, ugly, undeniable truth. They had not just betrayed me. They had executed a perfect, cold-hearted plan. They had used my grief as a shield. They had used my trust as a weapon. They had taken my money, my children, my name, and my history, and they had built their paradise on the foundation of my grave. The rage was gone. The shame was gone. All that was left was a clear, cold, and absolute certainty. They had to pay, but not with jail. That would be too simple, too abstract. They would spin a story. They would become victims of a system. My children would grow up hating me. No, I needed a different kind of justice, a quieter kind. I needed to make their paradise a prison. I needed to take from them what they had taken from me, their future. The plan was forming, a shadow taking shape in my mind. It was intricate. It required patience. But first, I needed one more thing. I needed to look into the eyes of the architect and see if there was even a flicker of the woman I loved. I chose the supermarket. It was a place of mundane errands, a place where miracles and monstrosities shouldn't happen. I found her in the produce section, comparing avocados. Helen. She was wearing yoga pants and a loose sweater, her hair in a messy bun. She looked comfortable, ordinary. The most terrifying monster is the one that looks just like everyone else. My heart wasn't pounding anymore. It was beating a slow, steady drumbeat of resolve. I walked up beside her. "The Haas are usually better this time of year," I said, my voice calm, steady. She nodded absently without looking up. "That's what I thought. Her eyes met mine. The world stopped. The color drained from her face so completely I thought she might faint. The avocado fell from her hand, thudding softly on the tiled floor. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was the look of a person seeing a ghost they knew they deserved. Hillel, she stammered, her voice a thin whisper. "Hello, Vivian," I said. The name felt foreign on my tongue. "Or do you prefer Helen now?" She took a stumbling step back, hitting her cart. The rattle of it was loud in the quiet aisle. You're not supposed to be here." "Where am I supposed to be, Vivian?" I asked, my voice still dangerously quiet. "In my apartment? Weeping? Or in the grave you and my brother dug for me?" Tears sprang to her eyes, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic, of a plan unraveling. "You don't understand. It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like," I said, taking a small step closer. "Tell me why you did it. Look at me and tell me why my children call another man Dad." She shook her head, her eyes darting around, terrified someone would see us. "It was suffocating, Hillel. The life you wanted. It was a cage. Cheryl. He understood me. He saw me. So, the solution was to fake your death? To make me mourn you for 5 years? To steal my children?" The calm in my voice was cracking. The raw pain was seeping through. "Did you ever love me? Or was I just a placeholder?" She looked down, unable to hold my gaze. "I did love you. Once. But it changed. And the children, were they part of the cage too? Was it so easy to rip them away from their father?" "They're happy," she hissed, a desperate fire in her eyes now. "They're safe and loved and they have a normal life. Don't you ruin this. Don't you dare. Don't you ruin this." The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it left me speechless. She was the victim here? I was the threat to their happiness. I looked at this woman, this stranger who had shared my bed for 20 years, and I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just a vast, empty silence. The last thread connecting me to the past had just been severed. "A normal life," I repeated softly, "built on a foundation of lies and a man's corpse." I leaned in, just a little, and saw her flinch. "You should have just left me, Vivian. That, I could have forgiven. This, I never will." I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, pale and shaking among the fruits and vegetables. I had my answer. There was no remorse, only a desperate desire to protect the beautiful lie. It was all the confirmation I needed. The ghost was done watching. It was time to act. Before we continue, I have to ask you something. If it were you in my shoes, what would you have done when you discovered the truth? Let me know in the comments. And, if you haven't already, joining this community by subscribing and hitting that bell means the world. You're my witness. Now, let's finish this. Confronting Vivian had been about severing a tie. Confronting Cheryl was about something else entirely. Excavation. I needed to unearth the rot, to understand the depth of the betrayal from its source. I didn't go in with rage. I went in with a performance, my finest in a lifetime. I called him, my voice a carefully crafted tremor of defeat. Cheryl, I need your help. He was at my apartment door in an hour, his face a mask of brotherly concern. Hillel, what's wrong? You sound terrible. I can't do this anymore, I said, gesturing vaguely at the empty apartment. This existence. I'm selling everything. Moving away. Maybe Alaska. Somewhere the memories can't find me. I saw it in his eyes. A flicker of relief, so quick I would have missed it if I wasn't looking for it. The final loose end, tying itself up. But before I go, I continued, leaning forward as if sharing a confidence, there are financial things. From the estate. Things I never understood. You handled it all. I need you to walk me through it one last time. For my own peace of mind. He relaxed. This was his language. This was his domain. Of course, Hillel. Anything. Let's go to my place. My files are all there. We can have a drink, get it sorted. His place. My old house. Walking through that door was like stepping into a twisted dream. The foyer where I'd taught Kendrick to tie his shoes. The living room where I'd read bedtime stories to Lily. The walls were a different color, the furniture was modern and cold, but the bones of my life were still there, screaming silently at me. It smelled of them, of Vivian's new perfume and Cheryl's cologne. He led me down to the basement, which he'd converted into a home office and a wine cellar. My little sanctuary, he said proudly. He poured 2 glasses of an expensive red. My favorite vintage, I noted with a cold twist in my gut. He opened a filing cabinet, pulling out folders labeled Estate Hillel. He began talking, his voice a smooth, patronizing river of lies. Insurance disbursements, house sale proceeds, investment transfers. He presented it all as a testament to his good stewardship. I let him talk. I nodded along, the picture of a confused old man. Then I, accidentally, knocked my glass over, the red wine spreading like a bloodstain across his pristine desk. "Oh, Cheryl, I'm so sorry." He jumped up. It's fine. Don't worry." He grabbed a roll of paper towels and rushed to the sink in the corner to wet them. It was the window I needed. My eyes scanned the filing cabinet. And there it was, tucked behind the other files, a simple, unlabeled cardboard box. A ghost from my past. I recognized the slight tear on the side. It was the box I'd kept my own private documents in. Old passports, military records, the kids' birth certificates. The things Cheryl had told me were probably lost in the move. While his back was turned, I slid it out. It was heavy. It wasn't just my memories. "Here, let me help," I said, my voice thick with false apology, grabbing a handful of towels and moving to block his view of the cabinet. I mopped at the wine, my heart hammering a triumphant rhythm against my ribs. The box was tucked under my arm, hidden by my baggy coat. He turned back, fussing over the desk. "Really, Hillel, it's nothing. The important thing is that you're okay." I looked at him, my brother, in the house that was mine, with the wife who was mine, and I felt the performance slip for a single, terrifying second. "Yes," I said, my voice dropping all pretense of weakness. "I will be." He looked up, startled by the shift in my tone, but I was already smiling again, the sad, old man. "Thank you, Cheryl, for everything. You've been more helpful than you know." I left him there, mopping up the fake mess, oblivious to the real one I was carrying out the door under my arm. I had gone into the lion's den and stolen its teeth. Back in the silence of my apartment, I opened the box. It was a time capsule of my own destruction. On top were my personal documents, just as I'd remembered, but beneath them was their truth. There were forged death certificates, clumsy drafts on a home printer, receipts for the junkyard car, emails printed and saved between Cheryl and Vivian from over a year before the accident. The language was not of secret lovers, but of co-conspirators. They discussed timelines, money transfers, the creation of Helen Miller's identity. They talked about me. "Hillel is so trusting," Vivian wrote. "He'll never suspect a thing." Cheryl's reply, "Just keep him calm. The life insurance medical is next week. He can't get stressed." I read their words, and I felt nothing. The pain had been burned away, leaving only the cold, hard fuel for what came next. Revenge, for me, was not a headline. It was not a dramatic scene in a courtroom. That would make them victims of a system, a tragic story of a man driven mad by grief. It would hurt the children. My revenge was to be the quiet, invisible architect of their ruin, just as they had been of mine. I spent the next month moving with a purpose I hadn't felt in decades. I used the documents from the box. I accessed the investment accounts Cheryl had set up for me, the ones he still technically managed. With the evidence of fraud, it was a simple, quiet legal procedure to have them frozen and the management transferred solely to me. Then I began to dismantle his life, piece by piece. I liquidated every asset I had that was tied to his financial advisory firm. It was a significant portion of his business capital. The withdrawal triggered audits and scrutiny from his investors. Whispers began in his professional circle. Next, I used the evidence of the stolen funds, the down payment for the yellow house, to file a civil suit against Helen Miller. Not a criminal case, a civil one. The goal wasn't to send her to jail. It was to bury her in a mountain of debt and legal obligation. The lawsuit would attach a lien to the house, a chain they could never shake off. I contacted the life insurance company with evidence of the fraud. They opened their own investigation, demanding the return of the full payout, with interest. I did all of this through lawyers, a silent, faceless force. I was a ghost, pulling the financial strings of their world until it became a prison. I knew Cheryl would come to me. He did, one frantic Sunday, his face pale, his expensive suit looking rumpled. "Hillel, something's happening," he blurted out, not even bothering with a greeting. "My business. Investors are pulling out. And Vivian, Helen, she's being sued. The insurance company is coming after us. It's a nightmare." I looked at him from my armchair, the picture of calm. "A nightmare?" I repeated softly. "How terrible for you." His eyes narrowed, the pieces slowly connecting in his mind. This is you, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I just held his gaze, letting the silence confirm everything. The color drained from his face. It wasn't the rage he expected. It was this quiet, surgical destruction. "Why?" he whispered, a desperate, broken sound. "We're brothers." That was the final, beautiful twist of the knife. I leaned forward, my voice barely a whisper, but every word was a shard of ice. "No, Cheryl. A brother doesn't help pack away his nephew's toys while planning to tuck him into bed in a stolen house. A brother doesn't hold your hand at a funeral for a wife who is still alive. You ceased to be my brother the moment you decided my life was yours to take. This isn't revenge. This is balance." I stood up, walking to the door and holding it open for him. "Now, get out of my sight. You have a nightmare to get back to." He left, a broken man, not by a fist but by the cold, inexorable weight of consequence. The legal machinations grind on, and they will for years. The house is under lien. The lawsuit looms. Cheryl's business is crumbling under the weight of debt and lost confidence. They are together, yes, but they are trapped. Their paradise has become a gilded cage, and every day they are reminded that the ghost they left behind holds the key. I do not take pleasure in it. I take solace. The stone that was in my chest for 5 years is gone. In its place is a scar, thick and tough, a reminder of what was taken and what I reclaimed. My agency. I moved. I am in a small, bright house by the sea, in a town where no one knows me as the widower of Oak Lane. The sound of the waves is a constant, gentle roar that washes away the silence. The second bedroom is not a shrine. It is sparsely furnished with a desk and a bookshelf. On that desk sits a sealed, waterproof box. Inside are my treasures. Not the painful memories, but the pure ones. The best ones. A photo album of Lily and Kendrick as babies. Kendrick's first drawing of our family, Lily's favorite book, The Velveteen Rabbit, and a letter. I have written them a letter. It tells them the truth, not with venom, but with a father's aching love. It explains who I was, who their mother and uncle were, and why I did what I did. I have told them that I loved them every second of every day, even the ones they spent calling another man Dad. I have left them no inheritance of money, which is tainted, but an inheritance of truth. The letter is to be given to them on their 18th birthdays. I do not know if they will ever read it. I do not know if I will ever hold them again. That is a grief I have learned to carry, a different weight, one tinged with hope instead of despair. This morning I woke up early. I made coffee and took it out to the small deck that overlooks the ocean. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. The air was cold and clean. I am 65 years old. I spent 5 years as a ghost and a few months as an avenger. Now I am just a man. The pain is part of me, a deep and permanent strata in the geology of my soul, but it does not define me. I look out at the vast, endless horizon, and for the first time since that rainy night, the future is not a terrifying void. It is a blank page. I sip my coffee. It is bitter and it is warm. It is the first day. If this story resonated with you, if you felt that shock, that betrayal, or if you simply believe in the power of reclaiming your own story, then do me a favor, join our family here. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell.